My stepfather tried to destroy my engagement with a fake cheating scandal using his 20-year-old mistress, but when we exposed his affair to my mother, his entire life fell apart and now he's facing criminal charges. I need advice on whether I should tell my mother about something terrible I discovered. This situation involves my stepfather Mark, 52M, my fiancée Jessica, 26F, my mother Carol, 48F, and a college girl named Amy, 20F. Jessica and I got engaged 3 months ago after dating for 2 years. We met at a coffee shop near the university where she works as a research assistant. I was there working on my laptop when she accidentally knocked over my coffee while rushing to her table. She bought me a new one and we started talking. I work in IT support for a small company, nothing fancy, but I make decent money and have good benefits. Jessica comes from what you'd call old money. Her family owns several businesses across the state and has connections everywhere. When we first started dating, she never mentioned any of this. She drove an older Honda, wore simple clothes, and always split the bill on dates. I thought she was just like me, someone working hard to get by. About 6 months into our relationship, she finally told me about her family's wealth. She said she had learned to hide it because too many people had tried to use her for money in the past. She wanted to make sure I cared about her as a person first. I was shocked but also understood why she had kept it secret. Meeting her parents was intimidating. Her mother Linda, 51F, was polite but seemed to study everything I said. Her stepfather Mark had married Linda when Jessica was 12, after her biological father died in a car accident. Mark came from a middle-class background himself but had built a successful consulting business after marrying into the family. Mark made his opinion clear from the first dinner. He pulled me aside afterward and told me I should think seriously about whether I was the right fit for Jessica. He said she needed someone who could match her social status and provide the lifestyle she was accustomed to. He suggested I was holding her back from better opportunities. Over the next year and a half, Mark never missed a chance to undermine our relationship. At family gatherings, he would make comments about how Jessica deserved someone more established. He would bring up successful young men he knew and suggest Jessica should meet them. When Jessica defended me, he would act like he was just looking out for her best interests. The worst incident happened last Christmas. Mark had invited Jessica and me to a charity gala without telling us he had also invited the son of one of his business partners. This guy, Trevor, 28M, was a lawyer from a prominent family. Mark spent the entire evening trying to get Jessica to dance with Trevor and talk to him about his work. When Jessica refused and stayed with me, Mark accused her of being stubborn and throwing away good connections. That night, Jessica and I had a long conversation about her family situation. She said Mark had gotten worse over the years, especially after she started college. He seemed to think he had a right to control her choices because he had helped raise her. Her mother Linda usually stayed quiet during these confrontations, which frustrated Jessica even more. Things came to a head 2 months ago when Jessica and I announced our engagement. We had planned a small celebration with both families. Mark showed up late and barely acknowledged the news. Later, he cornered Jessica in the kitchen and told her she was making a huge mistake. He said I was obviously after her money and that she would regret marrying beneath her station. Jessica came out of that conversation shaking with anger. She told Mark that if he couldn't respect her choices, he wouldn't be welcome at our wedding. Mark laughed and said she would come to her senses eventually. He left early that night without saying goodbye to anyone. After that confrontation, Jessica decided to limit contact with Mark. She would still visit her mother but would leave if Mark started his usual comments. This went on for about 6 weeks without any major incidents. Then 3 days ago, everything exploded. Jessica received a Facebook message from someone named Amy Thompson. The message said Amy needed to tell Jessica something important about me. Jessica showed me the message immediately because we don't keep secrets from each other. Amy claimed that I had been messaging her on dating apps and that we had met up twice in the past month. She said I had told her I was single and that we had been intimate both times. She provided details about supposedly meeting me at a restaurant downtown and then going back to her apartment. Jessica knew the accusations were false. I work from home most days and we spend almost all our free time together. She has access to my phone and laptop whenever she wants. There would be no opportunity for me to have these secret meetings even if I wanted to. Jessica decided to call Amy directly to get to the bottom of the situation. She put the call on speaker so I could hear everything. Amy stuck to her story at first, describing dates and conversations that never happened. When Jessica pressed for proof like screenshots or photos, Amy said she had deleted everything. Jessica told Amy that we knew she was lying and asked why she was making false accusations. Amy got quiet for a moment, then said she was sorry and that someone had asked her to contact Jessica with this story. When Jessica demanded to know who, Amy hung up. Jessica called back immediately. This time Amy answered but sounded like she had been crying. Jessica told Amy that making false accusations could have serious legal consequences and that we were considering involving the police. Amy broke down and admitted the whole thing was made up. But then Amy said something that made both Jessica and me freeze. She said Mark had asked her to send those messages. She said Mark had told her exactly what to say and had promised to help her with something important if she did it. Jessica asked Amy to explain the connection to Mark. Amy said she had been working as a server at a restaurant Mark frequents for business lunches. She said Mark had been flirting with her for months and that they had started spending time together outside of work. Amy then said something that made Jessica go pale. Amy said she and Mark had been sleeping together for almost 6 months and that he had promised to leave Linda for her. She said Mark had told her that if she helped break up Jessica's engagement, he would prove how serious he was about their relationship. Jessica asked Amy to provide proof of her relationship with Mark. Amy sent several photos showing her and Mark together at restaurants and hotels. She also sent screenshots of text messages between them that were clearly romantic and sexual in nature. Jessica stared at the evidence for a long time without saying anything. She finally asked Amy why she had agreed to lie about me. Amy said Mark had convinced her that I was wrong for Jessica and that breaking us up would be good for everyone. She said she was in love with Mark and would do anything he asked. After we hung up, Jessica sat in silence for over an hour looking through all the photos and messages Amy had sent. She kept checking the details to see if they could be fake, but everything looked genuine. The timestamps on the messages went back months, and the photos showed Mark and Amy in places Jessica recognized from Mark's social media posts. Now Jessica is torn about what to do with this information. She's disgusted by Mark's attempt to sabotage our engagement, but she's also worried about how this will affect her mother. Linda has been married to Mark for 14 years and seems to trust him completely. Jessica doesn't know if she should tell Linda about the affair or just cut Mark out of her life without explanation. Jessica is also concerned that if the affair allegations are somehow false, confronting Mark could backfire and make him even more determined to break us up. But if the affair is real, she feels like her mother deserves to know what kind of man she's married to. I've told Jessica that I'll support whatever decision she makes, but I think Linda has a right to know the truth. Mark has shown that he's willing to go to extreme lengths to control Jessica's life, and I don't think this behavior will stop just because his current plan failed. What should we do? Should Jessica tell her mother about Mark's affair and his attempt to destroy our engagement, or should we just distance ourselves from him and hope he leaves us alone? Update 1. I wanted to update everyone on what happened after my original post. The situation has gotten much more complicated than we expected. After reading through all the comments on my post, Jessica decided she needed to confront Mark directly before involving her mother. She wanted to give him a chance to explain himself and maybe end the affair voluntarily. Looking back, this was probably naive, but Jessica still had some hope that Mark might do the right thing. Jessica called Mark and asked him to meet her for coffee without Linda knowing. She told him she needed to discuss something important about our engagement. Mark agreed, probably thinking he had another opportunity to change her mind about marrying me. They met at a coffee shop downtown last Saturday morning. Jessica brought printed copies of all the evidence Amy had provided, including the photos and text messages. She also brought her phone in case she needed to call Amy again. Jessica told Mark she knew about his affair with Amy and his plan to sabotage our engagement. She showed him the photos and messages Amy had sent. Mark's face went completely white when he saw the evidence, but he didn't deny anything right away. Jessica said Mark sat quietly for several minutes, staring at the photos. Finally, he admitted the affair was real but claimed it had been a mistake that was already over. He said Amy was obsessed with him and wouldn't leave him alone. He denied asking Amy to lie about me. Jessica pulled out her phone and called Amy right there in the coffee shop. She put the call on speaker and asked Amy to repeat what she had told us about Mark's instructions. Amy confirmed that Mark had specifically asked her to contact Jessica with false accusations about me. She said Mark had given her details about our relationship to make her story sound more believable. Mark tried to interrupt and deny what Amy was saying, but Jessica told him to stay quiet. Amy went on to describe several conversations where Mark had talked about how much he disliked me and wanted Jessica to find someone else. Amy said Mark had told her that breaking us up would benefit everyone involved. After Amy hung up, Mark finally admitted he had asked her to contact Jessica, but he claimed he was just trying to protect Jessica from making a bad decision. He said he had seen too many young women marry the wrong person and ruin their lives. He insisted his motives were good even if his methods were questionable. Jessica told Mark that his interference in her personal life was completely unacceptable and that the affair was a betrayal of her mother. She said he had 48 hours to tell Linda about the affair himself, or she would do it for him. Mark begged Jessica not to tell Linda. He said the affair was over and that destroying his marriage wouldn't help anyone. He promised to stop interfering in our relationship if Jessica would keep quiet about Amy. He even offered to pay for our wedding and give us his blessing. Jessica told Mark that buying her silence wasn't an option. She said Linda deserved to know what he had been doing behind her back. Mark got angry and accused Jessica of trying to destroy their family out of spite. He said I had turned her against him and that she was choosing a nobody over the man who had raised her. Jessica stood up to leave, but Mark grabbed her arm and told her she would regret making an enemy of him. He said he had connections and resources that could make our lives very difficult if we crossed him. Jessica pulled away and told him that threatening her only proved she was making the right decision. Jessica came home and told me everything that had happened. She was shaking from the confrontation but determined to tell her mother the truth. We decided to wait until the 48-hour deadline passed to see if Mark would confess on his own. Monday evening came and went with no word from Linda, so we knew Mark hadn't said anything. Jessica called her mother Tuesday morning and asked if they could have lunch together. Linda agreed, probably thinking Jessica wanted to discuss wedding plans. Jessica and Linda met at Linda's favorite restaurant yesterday afternoon. Jessica brought copies of all the evidence again, including new photos Amy had sent showing her and Mark together just days after their coffee shop confrontation. This proved Mark had lied about ending the affair. Jessica told Linda everything, the false accusations against me, Mark's affair with Amy, and his attempt to blackmail Jessica into silence. Linda initially didn't believe any of it and accused Jessica of making up stories because she was angry about Mark's disapproval of our engagement. Jessica showed Linda the photos and text messages. Linda examined each piece of evidence carefully, asking questions about dates and locations. Some of the photos were taken at places Linda recognized from Mark's business trips. The text messages referenced conversations Mark had supposedly had with clients on days Linda remembered him being away from home. Linda became very quiet as she went through everything. Jessica said her mother's hands were shaking as she read some of Mark's more explicit messages to Amy. Finally, Linda asked Jessica to call Amy so she could hear the story directly. Amy answered the phone and repeated everything she had told us. She described her relationship with Mark in detail, including specific things he had said about Linda and their marriage. Amy also admitted that Mark had continued seeing her even after promising Jessica the affair was over. Linda asked Amy several personal questions that only someone close to Mark would know the answers to. Amy answered correctly each time, describing Mark's habits and preferences in ways that made it clear she had spent intimate time with him. After the call ended, Linda sat in silence for almost 20 minutes. Jessica said her mother looked like she had aged years in the span of that conversation. Finally, Linda thanked Jessica for telling her the truth and said she needed time to figure out what to do next. Linda drove home and confronted Mark that evening. According to Jessica, Linda called her around 9 o'clock and said Mark had admitted to everything when faced with the evidence. He had begged for forgiveness and promised to end things with Amy permanently, but Linda told him it was too late. Linda has asked Mark to move out of their house. She said she can't trust him anymore and needs space to decide whether their marriage can be salvaged. Mark has been staying at a hotel for the past 3 days. Meanwhile, Amy has been calling and texting Jessica constantly. She seems to think that Mark leaving Linda means he'll be free to start a real relationship with her. Jessica has been ignoring these messages, but Amy's behavior is getting more desperate and erratic. Yesterday, Amy showed up at Jessica's workplace asking to speak with her. Security had to escort Amy off the property when she refused to leave. Amy keeps insisting that she and Mark are in love and that Jessica has ruined their chance at happiness. Mark has also been trying to contact both Jessica and me. He sent several angry text messages blaming us for destroying his marriage and threatening to make us pay for our interference. Jessica has blocked his number, but he's been calling from different phones. The most disturbing part is that Mark seems to think he's the victim in this situation. His messages show no remorse for cheating on Linda or for trying to sabotage our engagement. Instead, he's angry that his plans didn't work and that he's facing consequences for his actions. Linda has been staying with Jessica's aunt for the past few days while she decides what to do about her marriage. She told Jessica that discovering Mark's affair has made her question everything about their relationship. She's wondering how long he's been lying to her and whether there have been other women besides Amy. We're supposed to get married in 4 months, and this situation has cast a shadow over our wedding planning. Jessica feels guilty about the timing, but I've told her that exposing Mark's behavior was the right thing to do regardless of the consequences. I'll update again if there are any major developments, but right now everyone is just trying to process what's happened and figure out how to move forward. Update 2: the situation with Mark has gotten much worse since my last update. What we thought was just an affair with Amy has turned out to be part of a much bigger pattern of behavior. Linda ended up hiring a private investigator to look into Mark's activities over the past few years. What they found was shocking even to us. Mark has apparently been having affairs throughout most of his marriage to Linda, not just with Amy. The investigator found evidence of at least 4 other women Mark has been involved with over the past 6 years. Some were short-term flings during business trips, but others were longer relationships that lasted several months. One woman, a real estate agent named Patricia, had been seeing Mark on and off for almost 2 years. Linda was devastated when she saw the full report. She had trusted Mark completely and never suspected he was cheating, let alone with multiple women over such a long period. The investigator estimated that Mark had spent thousands of dollars on these affairs, taking women to expensive restaurants and hotels and buying them gifts. What made everything worse was discovering that Mark had been using money from Linda's family trust to pay for his affairs. Linda's family wealth comes from a trust established by her grandfather, and Mark had been given access to some accounts after they married. He had been making regular withdrawals for years, claiming they were for business expenses. Linda's attorney calculated that Mark had taken almost $60,000 from the trust over the past 4 years. Some of this money went to legitimate business costs, but a significant portion was spent on his affairs. Linda never questioned these expenses because she trusted Mark to handle their finances responsibly. The most disturbing discovery came when the investigator looked into Amy's background more thoroughly. Amy isn't just some college student Mark met at a restaurant. She's actually the daughter of one of Mark's former business clients, and Mark has known her family for years. Amy's father hired Mark as a consultant when Amy was still in high school. Mark has been watching Amy grow up and apparently started pursuing her shortly after she turned 18. Amy's parents have no idea about the relationship because Amy told them Mark was just helping her with career advice. This revelation made Jessica sick to her stomach. She realized that Mark had been grooming Amy for years, waiting until she was legally an adult to start the affair. The idea that Mark had been planning this relationship while Amy was still a teenager was horrifying to everyone involved. Linda confronted Mark with all this evidence last month. Instead of showing remorse, Mark became defensive and angry. He accused Linda of violating his privacy by hiring an investigator. He claimed that all his relationships outside their marriage were meaningless and that Linda was overreacting to what he called normal male behavior. Mark also tried to justify taking money from the trust by saying he had helped increase the family's wealth through his business connections. He argued that he deserved compensation for the work he had put into maintaining Linda's social status and business relationships. Linda was so disgusted by Mark's response that she immediately filed for divorce. She also reported the financial irregularities to her attorney, who advised her that Mark's use of trust funds might constitute fraud depending on the specific terms of the trust documents. Mark's reaction to the divorce filing was explosive. He started calling Linda at all hours, alternating between begging for forgiveness and making threats. He told Linda that divorcing him would ruin her reputation in their social circle and that people would blame her for not being able to keep her husband satisfied. Mark also escalated his harassment of Jessica and me. He started showing up at places we frequented, watching us from a distance but not approaching directly. Jessica's co-workers reported seeing him in the parking lot at her workplace several times. He also drove by our apartment building multiple times each week. The breaking point came 3 weeks ago when Mark confronted me directly. I was leaving the grocery store when he approached me in the parking lot. He looked terrible, unshaven, wearing wrinkled clothes, and obviously drunk even though it was only 3 in the afternoon. Mark started yelling at me, blaming me for destroying his marriage and his relationship with Jessica. He said everything had been fine until I came along and turned Jessica against her family. He accused me of being a gold digger who was only interested in Jessica's money. When I tried to walk away, Mark grabbed my shoulder and spun me around. He said he wasn't finished talking and that I needed to hear what he had to say. He told me that he would never accept me as part of the family and that he would find a way to break up my engagement to Jessica. I told Mark to let go of me and leave us alone. He responded by shoving me backward into a parked car. At that point, I called 911 because Mark was clearly intoxicated and becoming violent. Mark saw me on the phone and stumbled back to his car, driving away before the police arrived. The police took a report about the incident and advised me to get a restraining order against Mark. Jessica and I went to court the following week and obtained temporary protective orders for both of us. Mark is now legally required to stay at least 500 feet away from us and is prohibited from contacting us directly or indirectly. Meanwhile, Amy's behavior has become increasingly erratic. After Linda kicked Mark out, Amy seemed to think this meant Mark would finally commit to a real relationship with her. When Mark continued to string her along without making any definitive plans, Amy started posting about their relationship on social media. Amy created a Facebook post with photos of her and Mark together, announcing that they were in love and planning to get married. She tagged several of Mark's business associates and social contacts in the post. This caused a huge scandal in Mark's professional circle, especially since everyone knew he was still legally married to Linda. Mark was furious about Amy's social media post and told her to delete everything immediately. When Amy refused, Mark cut off all contact with her. Amy responded by showing up at Mark's hotel and causing a scene in the lobby when the staff wouldn't let her go to his room. Amy has also been trying to contact Linda, claiming that she and Mark are meant to be together and that Linda should accept their relationship. Linda has blocked Amy's number, but Amy keeps creating new social media accounts to send messages. Some of these messages are pleading for understanding, while others are hostile and blame Linda for Mark's reluctance to commit. The stress of all this drama has been affecting Jessica's health. She's been having trouble sleeping and has lost weight from not eating regularly. Her doctor recommended that we consider postponing our wedding until the situation with Mark stabilizes, but Jessica is determined not to let him disrupt our plans any further. Linda has been staying with her sister in another state for the past month to get away from all the chaos. She told Jessica that she needs time and space to heal from discovering the extent of Mark's betrayals. Linda is also working with her attorney to ensure that Mark can't access any more of the family's financial accounts. The divorce proceedings are moving forward, but Mark's attorney is fighting the settlement terms. Mark wants to claim half of Linda's assets, including her share of the family trust. Linda's lawyer says this is unlikely to succeed given the evidence of Mark's financial misconduct, but it means the divorce will probably take longer than expected. Jessica and I have decided to hire our own attorney to make sure Mark can't interfere with our wedding or try to claim any rights to Jessica's inheritance. We want to be legally protected in case Mark's behavior escalates further. The wedding is still planned for next month, but we've had to change some of the arrangements due to security concerns. We're having a smaller ceremony with only close friends and family members we trust completely. We've also hired security for the event in case Mark tries to disrupt the proceedings despite the restraining order. Update 3: I wanted to give everyone a final update on this situation since so many people have been following our story. The past few months have been intense, but things have finally settled into a new normal. Jessica and I got married as planned, despite all the drama with Mark. The wedding was smaller than we originally intended, but it was perfect for us. We held the ceremony at Linda's sister's house in another state, far away from Mark and his chaos. Linda was able to attend and seemed genuinely happy for us, which meant everything to Jessica. Mark did try to interfere with our wedding, even with the restraining order in place. 2 days before the ceremony, he somehow found out where we were having it and called the venue claiming to be Jessica's father. He told them there was a family emergency and that the wedding needed to be cancelled immediately. Fortunately, we had already warned the venue about potential disruptions, so they contacted us directly instead of acting on Mark's instructions. We informed the police about this violation of the restraining order, and Mark was arrested later that day when he showed up at the venue location. Mark spent our wedding day in jail, which was honestly the best wedding gift we could have asked for. He was released the next morning with additional legal restrictions and a warning that any further violations would result in serious criminal charges. The legal consequences for Mark have been substantial. Besides the divorce proceedings, he's facing multiple charges related to his harassment of our family. The district attorney decided to prosecute him for stalking, making threats, and violating the restraining order. Mark pled guilty to reduced charges and received 2 years probation plus mandatory counseling. Mark's business has also suffered significantly from all the negative publicity. Several of his major clients canceled their contracts after Amy's social media posts and the subsequent legal troubles became public knowledge. Mark had to close his consulting firm and is apparently working for someone else now at a much lower salary. The divorce between Mark and Linda was finalized 2 months ago. Linda's attorney did an excellent job protecting her assets, and Mark received only a small settlement that barely covered his legal fees. He also had to repay the $60,000 he took from the family trust, plus interest and penalties. Linda discovered even more affairs during the divorce proceedings, including one with a woman who worked at their country club. The investigator found evidence that Mark had been unfaithful almost from the beginning of their marriage. Linda told Jessica she felt stupid for not seeing the signs earlier, but everyone assured her that Mark was just very good at hiding his behavior. Amy's story took a sad turn after Mark cut off contact with her. She became obsessed with winning him back and started showing up at his new workplace and following him around town. Mark had to get his own restraining order against Amy when her behavior became threatening. Amy ended up dropping out of college and moving back in with her parents in another state. Her father found out about the affair when Amy's harassment of Mark became public, and he was horrified that Mark had been pursuing his daughter while pretending to provide mentorship. Amy's father is considering his own legal action against Mark. The most disturbing revelation came when Amy's parents looked through her social media history and found evidence that Mark had been grooming her since she was 16. There were messages and photos going back several years showing Mark giving Amy expensive gifts and taking her to adult events without her parents' knowledge. Amy's father reported this information to the police, and Mark is now under investigation for possible statutory rape charges. The investigation is ongoing, but Mark's attorney is apparently trying to negotiate a plea deal to avoid a trial. Linda has been doing much better since the divorce was finalized. She's been traveling and spending time with friends she had lost touch with during her marriage to Mark. She told Jessica that she feels like herself again for the first time in years and that she's actually grateful the truth came out when it did. Linda has also been very supportive of our marriage, which has helped Jessica tremendously. She's made it clear that she considers me part of the family and that she regrets not standing up to Mark's behavior sooner. She's been helping us look for a house and has even offered to help with the down payment. Jessica and I have been living quietly and trying to rebuild our sense of security after months of harassment and threats. Jessica has been seeing a counselor to help process the trauma of discovering how manipulative and dangerous Mark really was. She's doing much better but still has moments when she questions her judgment about people. I've also struggled with trust issues after this experience. Finding out that someone hated me enough to orchestrate such an elaborate scheme to destroy my relationship was deeply disturbing. It's made me more cautious about people's motives and more protective of our privacy. We've learned to be much more careful about our personal information and social media presence. We've changed our phone numbers, moved to a new apartment, and limited what we share online. It's unfortunate that we have to live this way, but Mark's behavior showed us how dangerous obsessed people can be. The restraining order against Mark is still in effect and will remain so for another year. He's not supposed to contact us directly or indirectly, but he's tested the boundaries a few times. He created fake social media accounts to try to friend us and had a mutual acquaintance ask Jessica if she would consider reconciling with him. Each time Mark has violated the spirit of the restraining order, we've reported it to the authorities. His probation officer has warned him that any further contact attempts could result in jail time, which seems to have finally gotten through to him. Mark's current situation is apparently quite grim. He lost his house in the divorce settlement and is renting a small apartment across town. His reputation in the business community is ruined, and most of his former friends have distanced themselves from him. He's essentially starting over at age 52 with nothing to show for his previous life. Jessica occasionally hears updates about Mark through mutual acquaintances, but she's made it clear that she doesn't want detailed information about his situation. She's focused on moving forward with our life together rather than dwelling on the past. We're expecting our first child in 6 months, and Linda is excited about becoming a grandmother. She's already planning to spoil the baby and has been buying clothes and toys. It's wonderful to see her so happy after everything she's been through. Looking back on this whole experience, I'm amazed at how quickly our lives were turned upside down by one person's selfish and manipulative behavior. Mark's attempts to control Jessica's life ended up destroying his own family and career while bringing Jessica and me closer together. The most important lesson we've learned is that some people will go to extreme lengths to get what they want, even if it means hurting innocent people in the process. We've also learned the importance of standing up to bullies and not letting fear prevent us from doing the right thing. Jessica and I are stronger now than we were before this ordeal began. We've proven to ourselves and each other that our relationship can survive serious challenges, and we're confident about our future together. Mark's attempts to break us up ultimately failed, and we're living the life we always planned while he's dealing with the consequences of his choices. We don't expect to hear from Mark again, and we're grateful that this chapter of our lives is finally closed. We're focused now on building our family and enjoying the peace we've worked so hard to achieve. Now let's move to the next story. Story 2. My sister made out with my boyfriend at our engagement party. 5 years later, she is trying to use her baby to manipulate me into giving her money. 26F. Never thought I'd be writing this, but here I am. 5 years ago, my life was turned upside down when I caught my sister Amelia, 24F, making out with my boyfriend of 4 years, Ryan, 26M, at our engagement party. Yes, you read that right. The night Ryan proposed to me, I found him lip-locked with my own sister in our backyard. To give you some context, Amelia and I grew up in a small town in Ohio. Our parents, John, 54M, and Marie, 52F, ran a local hardware store that had been in the family for generations. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. Amelia and I shared everything growing up: clothes, toys, secrets. She was my best friend, my confidant. We even had our own secret language that drove our parents crazy. I met Ryan during my freshman year of college. He was this charming, ambitious guy majoring in business. We hit it off immediately. Our first date was at this quirky little coffee shop near campus. I remember spilling my latte all over myself, and instead of being embarrassed, Ryan just laughed and said it was the most entertaining first date he'd ever had. From that moment, I was smitten. Over the next 4 years, Ryan became a huge part of my life. He got along great with my family, especially Amelia. They shared a love for obscure indie bands and often went to concerts together when I was busy with my nursing studies. I thought it was sweet that my boyfriend and my sister got along so well. Little did I know. The day Ryan proposed was perfect. He took me on a hike to this beautiful waterfall we'd discovered in our sophomore year. As the sun was setting, he got down on one knee and pulled out a ring. I was so happy I could barely speak. I just nodded and cried as he slipped the ring on my finger. We decided to have an impromptu engagement party that night. Our friends and family gathered at our house. The atmosphere was electric. Everyone was so happy for us. I remember my mom hugging me tight, telling me how proud she was. My dad shook Ryan's hand and welcomed him to the family. Amelia seemed quieter than usual, but I chalked it up to her being overwhelmed by the sudden celebration. As the night wore on, I noticed Ryan was nowhere to be found. I went looking for him, thinking maybe he'd stepped out for some air. That's when I saw them. In our backyard, partially hidden by the old oak tree we used to climb as kids, were Ryan and Amelia. They were locked in an embrace that was far from familial. I stood there, frozen, for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds. The engagement ring on my finger felt like it was burning my skin. When they finally noticed me, they jumped apart. The look on their faces, a mix of guilt and something else I couldn't quite place, is seared into my memory. I didn't wait for explanations. I ran. I got in my car and drove to a hotel in the next town over. My mind was a whirlwind of confusion and pain. How long had this been going on? How could they do this to me? I spent the night crying and trying to make sense of what I'd seen. The next morning, I woke up to a barrage of messages. From Ryan, from Amelia, from my parents. Ryan's message made me sick to my stomach. He said he was sorry, but he and Amelia had fallen in love. Apparently, it had been going on for months. He claimed he'd proposed to me because he thought committing to me would make his feelings for Amelia go away. Instead, it had only made them stronger. Amelia's message wasn't any better. She apologized but said she couldn't help falling in love with Ryan. She hoped I could understand and forgive them both eventually. I couldn't believe what I was reading. My sister, my flesh and blood, was asking me to understand why she'd stolen my fiancé. I stayed at the hotel for a week, ignoring calls and messages from my family. I needed time to process everything. I thought about all the times Ryan and Amelia had hung out together, all the inside jokes they shared. Had I been blind this whole time? When I finally went home, I found my parents, Amelia, and Ryan waiting for me. They all tried to hug me, telling me how worried they'd been. Even Amelia had the audacity to embrace me, tears in her eyes. I pushed them all away and told them I was moving out. To my surprise, Ryan said there was no need, he was moving in with Amelia. And then came the real shock. My parents, instead of being angry or disappointed, were smiling. They said they were happy Amelia and Ryan had found each other, and while they were sorry about how it happened, they believed it was for the best. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own parents were taking Amelia and Ryan's side? When I pointed out that Amelia had stolen my boyfriend and broken up my engagement, my mother had the gall to say I was being selfish. She said I should be happy for my sister finding her soulmate. My father agreed, telling me not to act like a child because these things happen. I was done. I packed my bags and left, cutting off all contact with my family. I moved to a city 3 hours away and threw myself into my nursing career. I worked long hours, took extra shifts, anything to keep my mind off what had happened. Slowly, I started to rebuild my life. I made new friends at work, joined a gym, even adopted a cat. Over the next few years, I worked hard to build a new life for myself. I got promoted to head nurse in the pediatric ward. I saved up and bought a small but cozy apartment. I even started dating again, though nothing serious. I kept my social media accounts public but removed my family from my friends list. I wanted them to see how well I was doing without them. Occasionally, they try to reach out, a birthday wish here, a holiday greeting there. I ignored them all. I didn't block them because a part of me wanted them to see what they'd lost. It was petty, but it was the least I could do after how they'd hurt me. I heard through the grapevine that Amelia and Ryan got married about a year after I left. Apparently, it was a big wedding in our hometown. Everyone was there, except me, of course. I tried not to think about it, but some nights I'd lie awake, wondering how they could be so happy after what they'd done to me. Fast forward to last week. I was just finishing up a night shift when I got a call from an unknown number. It was my mother. I almost hung up, but something in her voice made me pause. She sounded desperate. She begged me to hear her out, saying Amelia and Ryan needed help. Apparently, Amelia and Ryan had started a business 2 years ago, some kind of tech startup. They'd poured all their savings into it, convinced it was going to be the next big thing. But it was failing miserably. They were drowning in debt, unable to pay their employees or their investors. My mother said they were on the verge of losing everything. And here's the kicker, my mother wanted me to loan them $80,000 to help them out of this mess. She knew I was doing well financially and hoped I'd be willing to help my sister. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything they'd done, they had the nerve to ask me for money? I told my mother no. Absolutely not. I wouldn't give Amelia and Ryan a penny if they were starving on the street. My mother started crying, saying I was being cruel and selfish. She said family should help family. I reminded her that Amelia and Ryan hadn't thought about family when they betrayed me, and neither had my parents when they took their side. I hung up and blocked her number. Since then, I've been getting messages from other family members, all trying to guilt me into helping Amelia and Ryan. They're saying I'm being petty and holding on to a grudge. But I don't see it that way. I'm just protecting myself from people who've proven they don't care about my feelings. Am I wrong for refusing to help? Should I let go of the past and help my sister out of this financial mess? Or am I right to keep my distance and my money to myself? Update 1. It's been a week since my last post, and things have escalated beyond what I could have imagined. I want to thank everyone for their support and advice. Reading your comments helped me stand firm in my decision not to help Amelia and Ryan. After I blocked my mother's number, I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. 2 days ago, I came home from a grueling 12-hour shift at the hospital to find Amelia and Ryan camped out on my front porch. They must have gotten my address from somewhere, probably a family member who still had me on social media. I was shocked to see them there. Amelia looked nothing like the sister I remembered. She was thin, with dark circles under her eyes, her once lustrous hair now dull and limp. Ryan didn't look much better. His designer clothes were wrinkled, and he had a scruffy beard that didn't suit him at all. They both jumped up when they saw me, and Amelia rushed towards me with her arms outstretched. I stepped back, refusing to let her hug me. The sight of her brought back a flood of memories, both good and bad. I remembered us as kids, playing in our backyard, making mud pies and pretending to run a restaurant. I remembered the night of my engagement party, seeing her in Ryan's arms. The conflicting emotions made me feel sick. I asked them what they were doing at my house. Amelia started crying, saying they had nowhere else to go. Apparently, they'd been evicted from their apartment and had been sleeping in their car for the past few days. As she spoke, I noticed she was wearing the diamond earrings our grandmother had left her. I remembered how proud she'd been to receive them on her 18th birthday. The fact that she still had them made me wonder if things were really as bad as they claimed. Ryan chimed in, saying they'd exhausted all other options. They'd sold everything they could, borrowed from everyone willing to lend them money, and were now at rock bottom. He said they wouldn't have come to me if they weren't desperate. As he spoke, I couldn't help but notice he was still wearing his expensive watch. It was the same one he'd worn when he proposed to me. I stood there, listening to their sob story, and felt nothing. No sympathy, no pity, just a cold indifference. I told them they needed to leave. Amelia begged me to let them stay, just for a few days until they could figure something out. She reminded me of when we were kids and I'd let her sleep in my bed during thunderstorms because she was afraid. But those memories only served to remind me of how much she'd hurt me. Ryan then had the audacity to suggest that I could invest in their business. He started rambling about market projections and potential returns, sounding more like he was pitching to a venture capitalist than begging his ex-fiancée for money. I almost laughed in his face. I told them that their poor business decisions were not my problem, and I wasn't about to throw good money after bad. Amelia broke down completely at this point. Through her tears, she said she was sorry for what happened 5 years ago. She said she regretted hurting me and wished she could take it all back. She talked about how she'd always looked up to me, how I'd been her role model growing up. She said she knew she'd made a terrible mistake and that losing me as a sister was the worst consequence of her actions. Ryan nodded along, adding that they'd made a terrible mistake. He said he'd realized too late what he'd thrown away, that he'd been young and stupid. He even had the nerve to say that he sometimes wondered what life would have been like if he'd stayed with me. That comment made my blood boil. For a moment, I almost felt a twinge of sympathy. I remembered the good times we'd had, the dreams we'd shared. But then I remembered how they'd acted 5 years ago, how my parents had supported them, how they'd all dismissed my pain as childish. That memory steeled my resolve. I told them that their apologies were too little, too late. I said they'd made their choices, and now they had to live with the consequences. I reminded them of how they'd hurt me, how they'd betrayed my trust. I told them about the nights I'd cried myself to sleep, the therapy sessions I'd needed to process their betrayal. I gave them 5 minutes to get off my property before I called the police. They left, but not before Amelia tried one last time to appeal to my sisterly feelings. She said we were family, and family should stick together. She brought up old memories, how we'd sworn to always be there for each other, how we'd planned to live next door to each other when we grew up. I told her she'd forgotten all that when she decided to betray me. After they left, I sat in my living room for a long time, processing what had just happened. The cat I'd adopted, Mr. Whiskers, curled up in my lap, purring softly. His presence was comforting, a reminder that I'd built a life for myself without them. A part of me felt guilty for turning them away. I thought about how our parents had always taught us to help those in need. But a bigger part felt relieved. I'd stood my ground, protected my boundaries, and refused to be manipulated by their sob story. I'm still processing everything that happened, but I know I made the right decision. I've worked hard to build my life and my financial security. Those long nights at the hospital, the extra shifts, the promotions I'd earned, all of that was mine. I wasn't about to risk that for people who'd proven they don't have my best interests at heart. I've decided to install security cameras around my house, just in case they decide to come back. I'm also considering moving, as I no longer feel safe knowing they know where I live. It's a hassle, but I think it's necessary for my peace of mind. Thank you all again for your support. It means more than you know. Update 2. It's been about 3 weeks since my last update, and I wish I could say things have calmed down, but they haven't. The situation has taken an unexpected turn, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it all. Last week, I received a letter from a lawyer. At first, I thought it might be related to work, maybe something about a patient's family. But as I read it, my blood ran cold. Amelia and Ryan were threatening to sue me for emotional distress and familial abandonment. They claimed that my refusal to help them in their time of need had caused them severe emotional trauma and financial hardship. I was floored. I couldn't believe they would stoop so low. The letter demanded that I either provide them with financial assistance or face legal action. It was a blatant attempt at extortion, and it made me furious. I thought back to all the times Amelia and I had played court as kids, using our stuffed animals as the jury. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine we'd end up on opposite sides of a real legal battle. I immediately contacted a lawyer of my own. After reviewing the letter, he assured me that their claims had no legal standing. Familial abandonment isn't even a real legal term, and you can't sue someone for not giving you money. He said it was likely a scare tactic, an attempt to bully me into complying with their demands. While I was relieved to hear that their threats were baseless, I was still shaken. The fact that they would go this far, try to intimidate me with legal action, showed just how desperate and ruthless they'd become. It made me think about how well I really knew them. Had they always been capable of this, or had desperation changed them so fundamentally? My lawyer advised me to send a cease and desist letter, warning them that if they continued to harass me, I would pursue legal action against them for harassment and attempted extortion. We sent the letter, and for a while, things were quiet. I tried to focus on my work, throwing myself into my nursing duties with renewed vigor. The pediatric ward was always busy, and the needs of the sick children helped keep my mind off my own problems. But then, a few days ago, I received a call from my Aunt Lisa, my mother's sister. Aunt Lisa had always been the family peacemaker. When Amelia and I fought as kids, she was the one who'd sit us down and make us talk it out. Hearing her voice brought back memories of summer barbecues and family game nights. She told me that Amelia was pregnant. Apparently, Amelia and Ryan had decided that having a baby would somehow solve their problems. They thought that once I knew about the baby, I'd feel obligated to help them for the sake of family. I was stunned. Bringing a child into their mess seemed incredibly irresponsible. I thought about the children I cared for at work, how much love and stability they needed. How could Amelia and Ryan think they could provide that when they couldn't even take care of themselves? My aunt begged me to reconsider my position, saying that the baby shouldn't suffer for its parents' mistakes. She even suggested that helping them now would be an investment in my future relationship with my niece or nephew. She reminded me of how close Amelia and I had been with our cousins growing up, how we'd always said our kids would be best friends too. I told my aunt that while I felt sorry for the unborn child, I wasn't going to be emotionally blackmailed. Amelia and Ryan's decision to have a baby in their current situation was their choice, and it wasn't my responsibility to bail them out. I explained that I had patients at the hospital who needed me, and I couldn't jeopardize my ability to care for them by getting entangled in Amelia and Ryan's financial mess. After hanging up, I sat for a long time, thinking about everything that had happened. I felt a mix of emotions, anger at Amelia and Ryan's manipulation, sadness for the baby being brought into this situation, and a strange sense of relief that I was standing firm in my decisions. I thought about my own plans for the future. I'd always wanted children, but after what happened with Ryan, I'd put those dreams on hold. Now, hearing about Amelia's pregnancy, I felt a twinge of longing. But I quickly reminded myself that I was building a good life, one where I could eventually welcome a child into a stable, loving home. I've decided to completely cut off all contact with my extended family as well. I've changed my phone number and email address, and I'm in the process of moving to a new apartment in a different part of the city. It's drastic, but I feel it's necessary for my mental health and safety. This whole situation has been a harsh reminder of why I distanced myself from my family in the first place. Their willingness to manipulate and guilt me shows that they haven't changed at all in the past 5 years. It's painful to realize that the family I once loved and trusted has become a source of stress and anxiety in my life. I'm tired, but I'm also more determined than ever to protect myself and the life I've built. The children I care for at the hospital remind me daily of the importance of boundaries and self-care. I need to be at my best for them, and that means not letting my family's drama drag me down. Thank you all for your continued support and advice. It means more than you know. Update 3. It's been about 2 months since my last update, and I'm writing this from my new apartment in a different part of the city. After everything that happened, I decided that a fresh start was what I needed, and I'm glad I made that choice. The move wasn't easy. I had to transfer to a different hospital, leave behind the colleagues I'd grown close to, and essentially start my life over again. But it was worth it for the peace of mind it's given me. I feel safer knowing that Amelia, Ryan, and the rest of my family don't know where I am. My new neighborhood is quiet, with a park nearby where I often take walks to clear my head. My new apartment is smaller than my old one, but it feels like a sanctuary. I've decorated it with plants and artwork, creating a space that feels entirely my own. Mr. Whiskers has adjusted well to the move, and his antics never fail to make me smile, even on tough days. Before I left, I did one last thing. I wrote a letter to my parents. I explained why I was leaving and told them not to try to contact me again. I made it clear that their actions, both 5 years ago and recently, had shown me that they didn't have my best interests at heart. I told them that I was done being the family scapegoat and that I deserved better than what they'd given me. Writing that letter was cathartic. It felt like I was finally closing that chapter of my life for good. I didn't expect a response, and I haven't received one. I'm okay with that. In my new hospital, I've thrown myself into my work. The pediatric ward here is busier than my old one, and the challenges keep me focused and motivated. My colleagues have been welcoming, and I'm slowly starting to feel like part of the team. It's not always easy. There are days when I miss the familiarity of my old life, but I remind myself that this fresh start is what I needed. I've also joined a local book club and a yoga class, trying to meet new people and build a social circle. It's slow going, but I'm making progress. These new connections remind me that family isn't just about blood relations, it's about the people who support you and have your back. As for Amelia and Ryan, I haven't heard anything more about their situation. Part of me wonders about the baby, hoping that it's healthy and cared for. But I've realized that their lives are not my responsibility. I can wish them well from afar without getting involved in their drama. This whole experience has taught me a lot about boundaries, self-respect, and the true meaning of family. I've learned that it's okay to prioritize my own well-being, even if others might see it as selfish. The children I care for at the hospital deserve a nurse who's emotionally stable and focused, and I can't be that if I'm constantly dealing with family drama. I'm still healing, still learning, but I'm in a much better place now than I was when I first posted here. There are still moments when I feel a pang of sadness for the family relationships I've lost, but those moments are becoming less frequent. Instead, I'm focusing on building a future that's true to who I am and what I want out of life. Thank you all for your support throughout this journey. Your words of encouragement and advice have been a lifeline during some really dark times. To anyone out there dealing with toxic family members or difficult situations, remember, it's okay to choose yourself. It's okay to walk away from people who hurt you, even if they're family. You deserve peace, respect, and love. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.